Welcome, everybody. I have just now a little after 12:30, so we'll go ahead and get started just so we can respect everybody's time. This is being recorded and will be available on OPSC's YouTube channel afterwards. I don't know how long it will take Cassandra to get it posted there, but she will get it up. And then you'll all be able to watch this again. Hopefully everybody can see my shared screen. If you do not see it, please put a note in the chat so that we know that it's missing. And so our topic today is presenting with OPSC. It is presented by myself. My name is Karl Baur. I am OPSC's Associate Executive Director. And prior to that position, I have been OPSC's Director of Meetings since 2012. And so it has been my pleasure to work with a number of our Education Committee chairs, including my co-presenter today, Carrie Janiski, DO, and I'm not going to read off the rest of the letters after her name. Suffice to say, she's done a lot. And I will let her do a quick introduction of herself before we jump into our material. Dr. Janiski?
Thank you, Karl. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. To those of you who are here now and those of you listening to us at a later time, that's more convenient for you. I am Dr. Carrie Janiski, and I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to work with Karl and the rest of the OPSC staff as the chair of the OPSC Education Committee for the last couple of years. I'm also currently a board member for OPSC and very pleased to serve in that role. Happy to be with you all today so that we can chat about being involved with our state osteopathic association and sharing the things that we love most about our practice of medicine.
All right. So this is really the crux of what we're wanting from our presenters. We want you to know your audience. So we have, for most of our events, we are looking at primarily family practice and internal medicine docs. And we really are a generalist organization in many ways. So we love having the specialists. You can get us information that we can't get other ways, but just know that you would be speaking to a more general audience of osteopathic physicians. We do want you to start with your passion. And actually, this is one that Dr. Janiski will talk with a little bit more. When you submit, we're looking for you to add some context to the situation, identify what the practice gap is, what's the dilemma we're trying to solve, or what information do people need. And then, of course, offering resolution. That's the content that makes up the bulk of your material. Content is the number one thing that folks are looking for. We do want you to make it compelling, tell a story as you're presenting. That's always a good thing. Be authentic. Folks can tell when you're not being authentic, and that's true whether you're in person or for a recorded presentation. So we really want you to come at this from wherever it is that you're situated and be honest and open about that. One of the nice things about presenting is it also challenges you to grow, not just your knowledge and skills, but also how to share that with others. The better you can present material, the better you can understand it as well. And then the other thing we'd like to point out too is, even though this is not a case where you are marketing yourselves to your fellow physicians, knowledge sharing is still effective marketing. It gets your name out there. And if you're interested in doing more presentations down the road, being a presenter for us is a good way to get your feet wet. So with that, let's jump to the next slide here for our process overview. And sorry, Dr. Janiski, I think I just took your slide. If you want to add anything to that last one before I go on.
You did such a great job, Karl. I don't even need
to
add anything.
So the quick overview, and we'll go into this in more detail. We start with a call for presenters. That's usually about anywhere from 3 to 9 months ahead of an event. Just sort of depends on which event and where we are in other processes here at OPSC. And we'll walk through the call for presenters form a little bit later. That call for presenters is open for a set period for a specific event, but it is open year round for people that want to offer us suggestions at other times, because we can use those for some of our other programs or save that for when we are going to be doing one of our larger CME events. That submission period is typically 30 days to 60 days. We found that if we leave it open longer than that, it doesn't really help with folks submitting. In fact, it just ends up confusing them a lot. There's then a review process. We'll go into some detail on that a little bit later as well. Once submissions are reviewed and they've either been given a thumbs up or a thumbs down to be included in a program, then staff will notify those that submitted about the status of those submissions. And then, of course, whatever the event happens will take place. Notifications will include things, if you've been selected, it will include things like the date and time of your presentation, any further requirements that we might have that were not included in your submission would be collected at that point. And then, as I mentioned, the final step is the event itself. You deliver the presentation. We do whatever follow-up we can with you on evaluations received from attendees. And that becomes something that you can use to improve your presentation down the road, as well as a tool then for our education committee to use in planning future events. And with that, I will turn this over to Dr. Janiski to talk about the education committee's goals and their role in the process.
Thanks, Carl. I would just add as a brief note at the end of that last slide, the CME event, that as most of you might know, if you're new to OPSC, welcome, we're glad you're here. The OPSC offers two large, recently virtual due to the pandemic, but generally in-person traditional conference style CME events in the fall, usually in around September in Monterey, and in the spring in February in San Diego. There are also smaller regional CME events that are more like a 1-2 day type event, and some virtual options as well. So we are doing this presentation with you today very much to encourage our osteopathic colleagues around the state to be involved so that we can continue to offer high quality education and content at all of our CME events for all the docs in California that want it. So the Education Committee has specific goals, things that we're looking for. We are looking to offer opportunities to participate. As I said, there's lots of CME opportunities for our members and physicians throughout the state of California, as well as out of state, now that virtual offerings are much more common than they used to be. We are looking for quality content. Certainly, as Carl said earlier, content is key. The quality of that is something that people are looking for, a high quality medical education content when they come to a conference. Osteopathic philosophy is something that we very much like to see woven in. We don't do a lot of standalone lectures that are just about osteopathic philosophy all by itself. As we all know, most of us are practicing docs in today's world, that those philosophies are integrated into the way that we practice and deliver medicine, the way we interact with our patients in the exam room, the way that we conduct ourselves in our business and out in the world. And so we love to see those philosophies and ethics woven into the content area as well. We want and accept all topics as a generalist organization. A broad range of topics is our goal. We always, as a committee, have areas that we're looking to fill. We track which areas of medicine have had a preponderance of topics that are CME offerings. And we're always looking to offset on sort of a 2 to 3 year running average that we've had a certain number of cardiology, pulmonology, ENT, surgery, urology, et cetera, types of lectures, so that we don't sort of find ourselves bogged down with one area of medicine all the time, or one area of medicine taking over an entire conference. We like for there to be a broad range of topics. There are occasionally tracks at our CME events, particularly the in-person ones, where though we are a generalist organization, we recognize that we did this a couple years ago, our pediatricians need pediatric specific CME for some of their board certifications. And so we offered a half-day pediatric track that ran concurrent with the rest of our content that was not dedicated, anybody could attend. It was oriented toward our pediatric members and attendees. And so we want a broad range. We strive very hard to fulfill on that promise to our members. And we also are watching who our members are and how can we best serve them with the content that we're putting forth. We want, as a committee, to offer lots of opportunities to participate in OPSC, the committees themselves, as presenters, attendees at our CME events, and as potential reviewers. And so if any of you listening to this presentation have an idea of something that you would like to present, if you have a friend that you think is a wonderful teacher that is just so passionate about the thing that they do that could improve the practice of other people that come to these events, or you have an interest in becoming involved in OPSC in more of a committee member role, we would be happy to hear from you, and that's why we're here with you today. So the committee is looking for quality education material. And just as a final note on that, there is a finite requirement that we as an osteopathic organization have to have, I believe per the AOA, a minimum of 30-ish% of material presented by osteopathic physicians. So one of the things you might have noticed if you've been to one of our CME events recently is that we do have PhDs, MDs, nutritionists, and other experts on our panels of presenters, because we do want to offer, again, quality education material. Now, we do have to have a certain amount of DOs on the speaker list, and it is our goal, though, to have the presenter role open to other types of experts that have something to offer our members and the osteopathic physicians of California. So with that, I will turn it back over to Karl to talk a bit more about what are some of the resources and processes available before you submit an abstract to present with OPSC.
Thank you. So as you can see here, the top thing that we have when you're getting ready to submit your materials is to prepare them all in advance. It will make the submission process go a lot faster. I have put the link on this slide as well, because we do encourage people to review the submission form. And there are some FAQs on there, and I'll jump to that in a minute so you guys can all see that. But I find that it works a lot better for you to organize your thoughts if you take all the pieces that we're looking for and have them ready to go before you actually start filling out the form. Because then you don't have to worry about coming back later, or did I forget to include something? Because one of the things that happens is we'll get incomplete submissions, and the education committee will not score them well because they don't have enough information to make a really qualified decision. So let me jump into the website here. So now you should all be able to see in front of the slides our webpage for the call for presenters, or excuse me, call for presentations. This is still oriented towards our fall conference. That is just because we are still in the process of building that one. And you'll notice that we always have information here at the top. It gives kind of an overview. If the education committee has given us direction on current areas of interest, we will list them here. Again, it is not that these are the only areas that they want submissions for, but it does let folks know that this is what they are especially interested in at this time. We also do add now a video streaming and recording piece, which I've just highlighted real quick. All of our main hall lectures at our big events are recorded. So if you're not willing to be recorded, please do not submit for a main hall lecture. That's sort of, I'm finding standard now in a lot of organizations, is they are recording the lectures. Now, having said that, we do sometimes have speakers that have proprietary material. And so we can make an accommodation for that depending on the nature of the material. Occasionally we have stuff that for HIPAA reasons, we do not post. A good example of this is we've had some rheumatology lectures in the past where the slide deck that is used in the presentation is not the one that goes with the recording, because the speaker has gotten permission from their patients to use their photos in a presentation, but we take the extra step and just assume that they've not given permission for them to be part of enduring materials. So that's one example. Occasionally we've had folks presenting research where, again, they've gotten permission to present it as part of a lecture, but not as part of enduring materials. And so we might strip that out of the actual presentation before it would be used anywhere else. But if push comes to shove, we do have occasionally some lectures that for one reason or another, we simply cannot record. But those are the exception, not the rule anymore. We do list any upcoming event dates that we know about. And so you can see here, we do have our fall conference listed and our upcoming convention. We actually now can put our fall conference for 2022 up there, but we generally don't list too far out simply because most people don't submit for something that is, for example, 2 or 3 years out. They're looking at things within the next 12 months typically. When you submit for an online course, that can be ongoing because that is just, we do that based on when you're available and when we have something that we're doing where that might be a good fit. If you've attended a bunch of these lunch and learns already, you've encountered that particular example, though you would not have known it. Dr. Hartwig actually was somebody that we had considered for one of our CME events. He was the one doing the talk on how to write a letter of recommendation. And we made the decision that that was better suited for a lunch and learn than for one of our CME programs. So we reached out to him and he agreed to make that transition. We do require responses to most of the fields on this form, which is another reason to have everything prepared ahead of time. I do want to bring your attention to the FAQs. These are an expandable menu, so you can click on them to get more information, click on them to hide them. We do try to answer the basic questions here about the form itself. So we do encourage you to look at those. There are 2 that I would particularly draw attention to: appropriate learning objectives. And we do have a statement here about what we're looking for, as well as a link to Bloom's taxonomy. There's some great resources out there. This is one, I believe it's University of Arkansas that has it, and they've given general permission for people to reference their resources. The other one is the needs assessment. For most lectures, we need to have what's called a need assessment or a gap analysis. And so we've described what that is here. There is also a link. Please click here. I'm not going to bring it up, but it is a sample needs assessment from one of our older programs. Essentially, it's identifying a gap in knowledge, having some external resources, footnotes, that would document that need, and then a discussion about why it's important for physicians to know this and how you're going to address it in your lecture. If you are submitting for osteopathic manipulative treatment or OMM, that does not require a needs assessment because the AOA considers that part of the profession and it's automatically considered to be a need. For talks like this, where we're talking about procedural things, or if you're talking about, say, healthcare billing and coding, those are areas that do not require needs assessments because they are part of the business of medicine, for example. So I'm going to actually go through and type out a submission so you can see where things fit. So I am going to be submitting for this actual presentation. And my autofill is turned off, so you're going to have to bear with me while I actually type this all out. And I do have, so this is presenting OPSC. All right, event options. For this, we are suggesting that we do this as an online course. but we're okay with doing it at any of the live events. So I'm going to click any box that applies, but you do need to please pick one at least. Type of session, we're going to say this is really a workshop. It's non-OMT. That's what we think it's appropriate for. The length of session, we're going to put 60 minutes. We may finish in 30, but when we've done this live, we know that we spend a lot of time going through examples and answering questions. So we're going to put for a 60-minute slot here. All right, learning objectives. This I do have in another document, so I am going to just copy from there. And so here's what I have. So we're gaining an understanding of how we solicit, review, and select faculty, understand the role of staff and committee members in that process, know who to ask for assistance, and understand the timeline for the process. So hopefully we cover all of these. For the description, for this, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use the description that is actually on our website. So in this case, we're doing it backwards. But this is the description then that would allow the education committee to look at this and say, does this make sense for what we're trying to accomplish? And do the learning objectives make sense for what we're describing? Now, where it gets tricky is when we ask you to pick a system and a thread. And so what this is this is where the education committee has given staff guidelines on different areas that they want to see submissions for. Most of them are medical. We do ask you to pick a primary system. So a good example here, we have a speaker that's going to be maybe say talking about say cardiovascular effects of diabetes. So they could put it into the renal category or the cardiovascular. We don't tell them which one. But they might choose, say, they're going to spend more time talking about the heart risks than they are about diabetes, so they'll choose cardiovascular. The additional systems covered might then include the renal, maybe some neurologic, because they're going to touch on some of the nerve damage that can come with that. Now, in this case, our talk that we're doing today would fall under none of the above. We're not a medical topic. We're not talking about healthcare economics. And same thing with additional systems. We don't fit any of those. Another good example is we might have a talk when we had our talk on fascia. That would be one that they might choose to put that under musculoskeletal as the primary, but the additional systems might be OMM, OMT, and say neurologic or something like that. And that's something where as staff, we can help you maybe identify which ones are appropriate, but ultimately, you'll hear me say this time and again, staff, we're not doctors. We're not subject matter experts. Thankfully, we have access to that through our committee. And so for content questions, we may have you work with one of our committee members, but we can certainly help you figure out when that's necessary. With threads, again, these are areas that weave in and out through all of the systems. So a respiratory lecture might be about geriatrics, pain, end of life, cultural competency, as well as technology. So we do ask you to pick one that is the main thread that you would identify as running throughout your talk. And then you can select up to 2 additional threads. And this is something that helps us work through future lectures as well, knowing what we have done and where maybe, okay, we've had a lot of lectures on occupational medicine. It's not that we'll automatically reject those in the future, but we might look to see if we can balance that out with some other threads. So for today's talk, as far as a primary thread, I'm going to, this is again, it's really one that doesn't fit into any specific area. So I would put none of the above for both of these. Core competencies. These are areas defined by the AOA, and we do have an FAQ box at the top that discusses these. Most of the submissions we get really fall under medical knowledge. So that's anything that's dealing with new treatment updates, latest procedures, that kind of stuff. But you could have more than one. So for example, a business of medicine talk talking about coding and billing, that would generally fall under systems-based practice, but it could fall under patient care and professionalism as well. Again, if you're not sure where something fits, the default is often going to be medical knowledge. Anything with medical knowledge does need a needs assessment. So the next item is the needs assessment. Now, this does require us to reply here. So we're going to put this under professionalism for this talk. Not the best fit, admittedly, but it is an area where we do need to have a response. Now, because we're not submitting this for a CME program, there is no needs assessment. That's only required for CME, and again, generally only for the medical knowledge topics. So instead, what I'm going to do is attach a file that basically says no needs assessment is necessary because this course is not being submitted for CME credit. So what I do is choose my file. I do have a program on my desktop that is my sample submission. So I will attach that. We can accept most file types. Word and PDF are the best ones to do because those are the easiest for us to then convert to something that the education committee can review. BioSketch. So this is just a short biography. We are really looking for what are your credentials that qualify you to speak on this topic. It is great to find out about your spouses and kids and pets, but that is not information we generally include in the bios that we publish because we do want to keep this to be on a more professional level, generally speaking. Now, a CV is optional, so I'm not going to bother to attach one, but we do like to have those for our records because that helps document your credentials in a way that other medical organizations can see that and know that you are credentialed. And we use that as backup if and when the AOA audits our programs. When did you last present for OPSC? This is just sort of a demographic type question. We don't have any hard and fast rules on presenting, but one of the things we will look at is, for example, Dr. Janiski one time, I think, presented at 4 or 5 events in a row. And so we got to that 5th one, and the committee actually took a look at, do we want to give her a pass this year? And that's not a knock on her content or her presentations. We do that for 2 reasons. One is to not burn out our speakers so that they're not constantly presenting for us. And the other, quite honestly, is not burn out our attendees. We also don't want to have the same people presenting to the same people all the time. Our events have a very high number of folks that attend frequently. And so we want to mix up the speaker list for them as well as the topics. And so the committee looks at this as a way of just highlighting who do we need to maybe look at a little more closely to make sure that we're not burning folks out. So this lecture actually has been given within the last 2 years, so I'll mark that. And then the final box here, is there anything else you'd like to share with the committee? The intent of this box is to capture anything that is not part of the submission that the committee would need to know as part of what their decision-making process includes. You'll notice nowhere have I mentioned Dr. Janiski in this submission so far. I don't do that because I want to cut her out. It is the process is designed because 99% of our lectures are individual speakers. In this case, we have a panel or a co-presenter. So here's where I would note that. So this lecture includes a co-speaker. And I am butchering typing today. Um, so this is where I can put that in, that there would be a co-speaker with me. Because then when the submission comes in, we can then reach back out. If a bio sketch for Dr. Janiski is not included at the bio sketch box, then we can reach back out and say, hey, please provide us with this as well. It's not usually necessary when you're talking about a co-presenter, because if you're accepted to present this lecture, we'll be reaching out to you for any missing information at that stage as well. And the committee really cares more about the credentials of the primary speaker. So not having a bio sketch for a co-presenter is not critical at this stage. The other thing that this area is used for is, for example, we marked up top that we think this is a workshop. So maybe we're willing to present in main hall if needed. We don't think it's appropriate for that, but if the committee comes back and says, you know what, we think this has got enough interest that we want to have it in the main hall, we've now told the committee up front that we're okay with them making that request. Our submission says we don't think that's where it belongs, but we're okay with that if the committee decides otherwise. The other thing that's helpful here is if you have any restrictions on when you can present. So if you need to be on a weekend due to work commitments, great, put that here. If you have to be in the morning due to work commitments, because we do have some that they're local, but they're in surgeries all afternoon. So if they're going to present, they've got to be in the morning. If you know these things up front, just let us know. The earlier we know, the better we can accommodate that when we're building the schedule. Once you've gotten all of this stuff completed, though, it's time to hit submit. One note I would like to make, though, before you hit submit, if you have any questions at all about your submission, you need to ask them before you hit submit. Once you hit submit, that presentation now goes into our scoring process, our evaluation process. Staff can no longer help you if there are any issues with it beyond just letting you know what information is missing. We can't help you anymore. Until you hit submit, though, we're happy to answer any questions we can. We can't speak for the committee, but we can often give you some guidance. If you need to speak to somebody from the committee because there's a content question, we're happy to hook you up. But now that I have just submitted, it is now in the process. And one of the reasons we don't assist once it's submitted is we don't want to contaminate that process. We need to make sure that the committee is reviewing everybody on a level playing field. And so once it's submitted, it is now untouched until decisions are made. We do encourage you to just jot down your submission number or print this page for your records. Just that way you've got a record of it being received by the system. And then once you've done that, you are done. Now you'll notice that no login was required to do the form. We don't require that. If you are logged in, it will connect you to your account on the back end for us, but it's not required because we know that a lot of people who submit to speak, we don't want to force them to make an account on our site if they don't already have one. So just to reiterate, when do you contact OPSC staff or the education committee? It's before you hit submit. Because once you've done the submit button, it is now in the process and we don't touch it again. All right, I have spent a lot of time talking. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Janiski to talk about the process once it has been submitted.
Thanks, Carl. In addition to the OPSC staff being very happy to assist you with the presentation submission process, the Education Committee is also very happy to be available. And again, as Carl said, and I will reiterate, that assistance is most helpful prior to submitting an abstract. As Carl said, once an abstract is submitted, it goes through the process that we're going to talk about, which starts with a blinded review. And so the abstract submission goes into an anonymous place first. and that makes it difficult for us to work with you and give you feedback if you've already submitted into the formal process. So the committee, myself as the chair of the committee, and all of our committee members are perfectly happy to be in touch with you about content or ideas. We might already know about some of the things that have been accepted or are being carried over from previous acceptances of people that were accepted for a previous CME event and ultimately were unable to present. And we said, well, your talk is already submitted, so how about next fall? And they're like, sure. And so if you have something that you're really excited about sharing with us, or you have a couple topics and you're like, I just really want to come to Monterey and talk to my people and submit a presentation, but I've got these two really great ideas and I don't know which one to pick, and I don't want to submit the wrong one because I don't want it to be something that they already have and then decline. Gosh, that's one of the most common questions we get, is people saying, well, I have these 2 or 3 things that I'm really interested in, and which one should I submit? And that's a great conversation topic. I've had some real interesting conversations with folks who are very interested in participating and have some just absolutely wonderful ideas that I, for one, would love to see standing up on a stage giving a lecture, because they're things that I would be happy to learn about. So pre-submission, OPSC staff and committee members are very happy to help with any questions about either the process or content that you're interested in submitting. A quick note on the learning objectives and the needs assessment. These are necessary steps for 2 primary reasons. One, we are credentialed through the AOA to be able to give CME that counts for your ongoing education, and the AOA does require these things as part of that credentialing process. And then the second reason that we require those things, the needs assessment and learning objectives, is it gives the committee and reviewers the opportunity to better understand exactly what it is that you're saying that you'd like to share, so that the review can be more fruitful. So that information is very valuable. We understand that it does take some time to think about and put information together, instead of just saying, well, here's the title of the thing I want to do, and I'm a specialist in that area, and so here's my thing. The learning objectives and the needs assessment do allow us to have a lot more information with which to go through the review process. So the review process starts with a blind review. Once abstracts are submitted, they are blinded and they go through a review process with selected members of the education committee and invited reviewers, people who are great at setting aside a couple hours of time twice a year to review some blinded abstracts and give thoughtful feedback and scores to the information that they're looking at.
So what
The blind review,
Dr. Janiski, before you go on,
yeah,
blinded means that we have taken out speaker specific information. So names, any identifying information of who they are is taken out, so that the reviewers don't know who submitted. They would, for example, just know that the submitter is boarded, but not necessarily which boards or who that person is.
Absolutely. Thanks for the clarification. So the blinded review, the anonymous or blinded review, happens with scoring the abstract submissions in 3 main areas. Whether or not the learning objectives are appropriate, meaning they're appropriately thorough, they offer actual learning objectives for the topic that's being suggested by the title, that the description is in line with the title and is an area that is appealing to the committee and therefore our members. As we discussed earlier with the systems and threads, we're looking to offer a broad range of topics, and we're looking to have that content be high quality. So the description of the learning objectives and the description of the content itself is very important for helping the reviewers understand what exactly is trying to be presented. And then the needs assessment: what is the need for this information? How is it useful to our attendees? And is it timely? The goal, again, is quality. Missing or scant information always scores low by the reviewers, which can land really amazing presenters in the deny pile simply because the reviewer committee doesn't have enough information with which to accept a presenter if we don't have the information on the paper. So the scoring and ranking happens first blinded, and then once those scores are calibrated and all of the abstracts that have been received to that point have been ranked by score, we then have a second meeting of the committee to review all of the scoring and ranking unblinded. So before we meet and look at all the abstracts with the names and the credentials and all of the identifiable information on them, a panel of reviewers gives scores to each of the abstracts, and then the committee meets to discuss those scores, review the blinded abstracts, and rank them largely into 3 piles: accept, reject, and discuss. Heading into the unblinded review after that process is done, we'll review all 3 piles again. We'll review the accepts and make sure that we don't have any concerns about who the people are that we've accepted. And as Carl said, the most common concern is people who are just really, really good presenters and always happy to help by being on faculty at our CME events, and making sure that we're not burning those people out or overwhelming them. We review the unblinded information for the rejection pile, and there are times when certain committee members will take the opportunity to advocate for an abstract or a presenter that's been put in the reject pile, specifically because of the person and knowing them, having seen them present elsewhere. This is an opportunity for us to look at feedback that we've received about presenters at previous conferences. And then the discuss pile tends to be the one that we discuss for the longest, as it is so aptly named. And this is the pile that allows us to decide presentations that maybe the quality of the abstract itself wasn't as thorough or as clear as we would have liked. Once we know who's presenting, that can sometimes add the clarity that we need just based on the credentials of the person, somebody else working with them, or having seen them at another CME event. And sometimes it's not enough clarity. This is also an opportunity for the committee to reach out to people in the discuss pile if we have follow-up questions about their abstracts. Sometimes if there's not enough information in the abstract and there may be because of their score, and then the name is revealed and it's not someone we're familiar with, maybe they're new to the area or they're new to OPSC, sometimes it's just a deny depending on how many other high quality submissions we've received in that particular review cycle. Once we've decided all of the discuss fall into either the accept or reject pile, then those recommendations are given from the committee to the chair and the chair of the education committee, the chair of the CME event itself, as well as the OPSC staff. These people create the curriculum, the 3 to 4 day agenda of topics that are going to be given at the CME event, or 1 day if it's one of our smaller events. And once abstracts and presenters are accepted by the committee and placed in the agenda, then all of the notifications are emailed out from OPSC staff to notify all of the presenters and submitters of the status of their submission, whether or not the committee has accepted or declined their abstract. And we are always happy to give feedback for if a denial was given by the committee and there was a specific reason, then we will ask for that reason to be communicated, particularly if it has to do with how the abstract itself was written, missing information or scant information that would have allowed the committee to more thoroughly review. And resubmissions are welcome. We are happy to hear from people who've gone through the abstract submission process, left some information out, and had the committee come back and say, we would have really liked this information to better understand your submission so we could decide if it was appropriate. We are happy to have that information added and resubmitted And again, as Carl said, anytime before that submit button is hit on the website, both OPSC staff and the education committee are happy to be in touch with people about the quality of the submission itself and or the content that's desired to be submitted. Carl, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, there's one more type of notification that we will do occasionally, and that is where we have a lot of good submissions, but not all of them can fit in the agenda, or there's too many of one type. And so we will come back to some of the speakers and say, would you be willing to do this at one of our other programs? And if you are, then we'll just lock you in right now because the committee has already reviewed it. They like it, they want it. We just couldn't get it into this program. So that's another one that happens on occasion. And that would be part of the notification process as well, is for those folks. So
perfect. Thank you for adding that, Carl.
Yeah. So kind of in conclusion, we really hope that you will share your passions with us. Passionate presentations are what gives any presentation energy. It's a great opportunity to give back to the profession. I do this in my own professional world of associations. I do things for them to give back because I get so much from them that I really see that as something to do. As I said also earlier, presenting enhances your own knowledge. When you have to explain things to other people, you have to really make sure you know it well. And that is a place where you can boost your own skills to help yourself as a physician, as well as being a presenter. Again, don't forget to ask for assistance. If there's any questions you have before you submit, we would love to have you reach out to us. Give us an opportunity to talk with you about what you're able to do for us, what we can offer you as far as options. And we'd love to have those conversations with you. With that, I will just kind of throw it open if any of you have questions in our final few minutes here. I believe we've covered everything that we were intending to. So I'll open it for questions. Yes, Dr. Gray.
Oh, hey, can you put that link on the chat?
Yeah. Yes. Give me a minute to do that. I'm happy to send out the slides if you would like those. Tell you what, I have your email, Dr. Gray. Dr. Pick, do you want the slides as well? I will just send it to both of you. That way you've got the link, because in the PDF that I share with you, that should be a live link.
Hi, one more time, Dr. Craig. So also, you mentioned it's going to be the presentation is going to be in Word, but we usually do a presentation in some kind of a PowerPoint or etc. Can you explain how we're going to transit that?
When you're submitting, Dr. Gray, we actually don't want the PowerPoint at that stage, because usually it's far enough ahead that we know a lot of content is going to change. So your submission, when you're like your description and your other information, that should all be in Word or as a PDF. We will reach out to you as far as when we would need a copy of your PowerPoint for the presentation itself. All right. Any other questions? Okay, that wraps it up. Thank you for being with us today and taking some time out of your day. Thank you, Dr. Janiski, for joining me for this. We hope that you will submit or pass this on to others. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you guys at a future Lunch and Learn or at a future one of our programs. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you all for attending.